Okay, so I think I'm live. Hopefully you can hear me. Please let me know in the comments if you can't. But I'm going to start now. I think hopefully everyone should be able to hear me. So, first of all, Happy New Year. Before anyone wants to join me live, I just wanted to say Happy New Year. We are in 2023. I'm just so thankful to God that we made it into 2023 and it's January. So, I know many of you are going to be thinking about your finances. You're going to be focusing on your finances. So, today I want to talk about managing money and how you can actually start to manage your money better in 2023. Now, if you've got any New Year's goals, like I know there's a couple of people that have joined us, let us know in the chat. Have you got any New Year's goals, specifically if you've got any financial goals that you're working through? Do let me know in the chat. But what I'm going to do is just start talking about my own story first, and then we can go through how to actually manage your money. And then any questions you can, of course, let me know, and I will be happy to answer them. So, especially if you are new to my channel and you've maybe just stumbled across, learning about finances recently, I kind of want to share my background in terms of how I started with personal finances and the kind of journey that I've gone through, just to give you some context and just so you understand that. Especially if you are in the beginning stages or you felt like you've made some financial mistakes in the past, just know that it's not just you. Like, I've made many financial mistakes in the past, so I just kind of want to talk about it. And I do see a few people joining me. So again, hello, and do let me know if you've got any New Year financial goals. Let us know in the chat. But let me talk about my kind of context and my personal finances. So, how I basically started was during 2018. That's when I really started to focus on my finances. So before 2018, I had just graduated university. So I'd done my master's. I did my master's in human resources and then got my graduate job. I had worked before. I worked in recruitment before that, but this was like my first graduate job. So it was the first time that I was really starting to make money. And if you're interested in how much I was making, my salary was like 27.5K. That was my salary for the year. So I was on a salary of about 27K. And this was like the most money I'd made, because before that, I was probably in recruitment, I was making about 20K plus commission. So your base salary was 20K, and then you had commission after that. Like any kind of sales that you made, you would be able to pocket some of that money. But whilst I was working in recruitment, that was when I was living at home. So I was living in my parents' house, so I didn't really have to pay for anything. Whereas when I got my graduate job, this was the first time that I'd really like moved out and had to sort out my own bills, which was separate than university. Because like in university, you've got halls and you kind of have to sort that out. But this was the first time like I'd moved out, I got shared accommodation. So I was living with other professionals and I was paying rent. And that also covered my bills as well. So once I had got that job, honestly, things just went downhill from there, because when you just get so excited that you're getting paid every month, like this is the first time, and especially because I had just done my master's. So when you're at university, you're broke, like you don't have money. So to have money now coming in and like a good, couple of grand coming in, you get so excited. And so I literally would just spend my whole paycheck. Like after I paid my rent, I spent my whole paycheck. Like I never ever had savings before. So, and it's so funny because now I would consider myself the saving queen, but I was not like that before. I used to literally spend every paycheck. I didn't even have a savings account, okay? Like that's how bad it was. I didn't have any savings accounts. I had nothing. And the only saving I had done is like one time where I had worked to save up for my first car. And even that was a mess, because I like when I got the car, I didn't account for things like paying for insurance, or if the car's not working, I'm going to have to fix it, or I'm going to have to pay for all of these extra things for the car. I had not prepared for that. So the only thing I just saved up was for the car, and then that was it. And then everything else, I ended up having to like use my overdraft. But that's like a different story in itself. But essentially, that's kind of how I started. And so in 2018, because I had moved out of my house because where I was working was I live in London, but where I was working was a lot further than London, so it was too long to commute, so I had to move out. But because I'd moved out after work, since I wasn't in like the London area, so I didn't have like my friends all around me, like I couldn't catch up with my friends, I just felt like it's probably God telling me this, but I just felt like I had so much time on my hands. And so I was like, do you know what? I actually kind of want to learn how people build wealth because when I had got into work, I had seen like these senior professionals and these senior leaders, like they were working and they were making money, but like they were always so busy. And it meant that they didn't really have time to like see their kids or to like enjoy time off or have all of this flexible working because this was all, pre-COVID and all the, working from home stuff. And I just kind of questioned, like, is that really what I want my life to be? Like, do I really want to work up the corporate ladder, but then at a point where I may not be able to like see my family that much because I'm too busy working. Like I was starting to pick that up. And so I decided like, is this like how people actually build wealth? Like, is this the right way? And so I remember, I think I started with like looking at YouTube videos. So I would watch some YouTube videos and then I came across like a lot of US creators, but I also came across like a lot of UK, not a lot. There was a couple of UK creators like Mama Furfur, The Humble Penny, like those were the two biggest ones. And then I started learning about personal finance. And literally, after that, I then decided to get a couple of books. So the first two books that I got was Meaningful Money Handbook, and I've got that linked in my description below somewhere, but also Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I think it was the Rich Dad Poor Dad that honestly broke my brain because I didn't realize like the way I thought people were building wealth was not the way that people were actually building wealth. And I didn't realize that just because you go to work and you make lots of money does not mean that you are wealthy. I had no idea. And so when I found out that actually the key to building wealth is by, building assets, starting to invest, all of that, I became like almost obsessed. Like it was almost as if you're entering into a new world and you're just trying to find out as much as possible. And so for me, I decided to do a lot more research. I was like watching more YouTube videos. I even started attending networking events and all of that stuff. But one of the biggest things I did, and this is what I always tell people to do if you don't know where like financially you are, like what your financial position is, I say to do a net worth statement. So I personally did a net worth statement. And what a net worth statement is it's your assets. So what do you own? What do you actually own? So things like cash, if you've got any savings, an emergency fund, if you've got any investments, things that you own, so those are your assets, minus your liabilities. And liabilities are going to be things that you owe. So if you owe money to creditors, for example, that is a liability. So if you've got any credit card debt, for example, any personal loans, mortgages, things like that, those are considered liabilities. And your net worth is essentially your assets minus your liabilities. So if you find that you have more assets, then you probably find that you have a positive net worth. But if you find that you have a lot more liabilities, then you will find that you have a negative net worth. And if you're subscribed to my channel, I have so many videos where I've actually shared what my net worth was in 2018, and my net worth was pretty much negative 16,000, like because I had no savings whatsoever. So I mentioned like I just didn't save. I had no savings, but also at the same time I'd also got into debt. So I had recently financed my car. I had a £2,000 overdraft as well, which I had since uni, which I just had never paid off. And so I started off being, having a negative net worth. And even though I would say it was quite difficult for me to see that negative net worth because I was like, oh my gosh, like I have no savings. Like, what have I been doing all this time? Even though it was a little bit frustrating, it was probably one of the best things I did because that gave me the kick up the backside to actually do something about it. And so from there, I said, you know what? Okay, I am going to work on reducing my liabilities and then increasing my assets. And that's pretty much what I've been doing over the past 4 years. And so I say this to say, just to show that if, for example, you're watching my videos or you're watching other people's YouTube videos or you're trying to like focus on your finances, just remember that people have been in the similar position to you. Like I have been in a similar position, and you may not even have debt. Like you may even be starting without debt. Me, I started with debt. Like, and so I started from a negative number. But I say this to say that you can also make a change when it comes to your finances. Like I've gone from having a negative net worth to, before I got married in 2021, I had like 10K in savings and investments. So I'd gone from minus 16K, paying that off in about 18 months, and then ended up with 10K in savings and investments. And I basically started investing that year as well. So I say this to say that like it is a journey, but it is possible, and it's happened to me, and I believe that it can also happen to you too. So I just wanted to give that as part of context, just especially if you're new to my channel and you're not really sure like what my story is like. Oh yeah, I was a mess. Like and I will even say like even during the process of trying to, learn how to save. And for me, I was trying to learn how to save so that I could first overpay on my debt. Even going through that was difficult. I made so many mistakes. Like I remember the first thing I wanted to do was try and save £500, which is probably like $500 nowadays anyway. I that was my first goal. Like I was like, if I could save 500, that would be great. Even getting to that point, guys, it took such a long time. It took a good few months because I just didn't know what I was doing, and I kept dipping into my savings sometimes, and it was just a hot mess, to be honest. So even just trying to get to that first step can take a while. But if you can go over, like the mistakes and learn from the mistakes, you can then eventually start to master it more. And then eventually it will start to snowball. Like for me, 4 years ago, if you told me to save £1,000, I would have just looked at you like you were crazy, because I'd just be like, what are you, like, you're actually crazy. But now I could do it like that. It's very easy for me to save money. But it's from a place of continuously learning, continuously making mistakes, and then reflecting on those mistakes and thinking, how can I improve on it better? And also from the help of God, because personally, for me, I'm a person of faith, and to, I feel like God had to put some stuff into my head, personally for me. Okay. So hopefully that gives you context. But what I want to do is kind of talk about the process, especially if you're trying to focus on managing your money in like this year a bit better. What kind of things that can you do this year just to make sure that you're getting better with your finances? And so I have a particular process that I go through, and I go through this with my clients as well, where I tell them the first thing is to clarify, then you want to control, and then you want to accelerate. So I just want to talk through this in a bit more detail, and then obviously if you guys have got any questions, please do let me know. And again, let me know if you've got any like financial goals in the chat and what you're trying to do to it, like to improve on it. Do let me know. So the first thing I will say is, if you're trying to manage your money, especially this year, clarifying your finances is going to be one of the biggest things. And I feel like this is one of the biggest things that I see people don't necessarily talk about. Like people will say like, oh yeah, like do your no spend month, or like just save money here and there, like do these saving hacks. But if you do not even know where you are financially, that no spend month may not help you. It may not help you, because you need to understand, first of all, where are you currently at and where are you trying to get to? And then you can then start to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to get there, and what's the process and all those things. So what do I talk about? So what do I mean like when I'm saying like know where you're currently at financially? So one of the things I'm saying is you need to know your numbers. One of the examples that I've given you like in my story was knowing your net worth statement. So asking yourself, have you done a net worth statement, or do you at least know where you currently are financially? You don't have to do a net worth statement per se, but do you actually know where you are financially? Do you know how much debt you have? Do you know if you've got any savings? Do you know how much your savings comes to? Have you started investing? Do you know how much your investments are? Do you even know what you're invested in? Right? Being clear on those questions and understanding, okay, this is where I am currently. And I say this not to be like, oh my gosh, like, oh, this is really bad. Like, I'm just too scared of my numbers, because I was scared to look at my numbers. But I say this because this is going to help you then figure out, okay, well, what do I now need to focus on? So in my case, although I saw, like in my net worth statement, that I didn't have any savings, I didn't have any assets. At the same time, I also saw that I did not have any I had a lot of liabilities, right? So my focus was then going to be on reducing those liabilities, especially because I had such a high interest rate. Like my car loan was like 14% APR or something ridiculous. So because of that, I knew that I had to focus on my liabilities. Hey Mabel, hope you're doing well. Happy New Year. So yeah, Mabel is a lovely, lovely person. She's someone that I'm with in Financial Joy Academy. So anyway, I digress. But yeah, so really be clear on your numbers. So be clear on how much debt do you have, how many savings do you have, how many investments do you have, and write it down so that you can see, okay, this is where my starting point is. Okay. So once you've done that, once you know like what your financial position is, you then now want to think about, okay, well, where am I trying to get to? Because it's all well and good me saying that I have debt and then wallowing in the debt and then just doing nothing about it. No, there's no point in doing that, because I may, if I didn't really have anything that I was working towards, I could just have the debt and just literally just, you know, have the debt and just, you know, be happy with the debt, be content with the debt. But for me, the reason why I needed to pay off the debt actually was because I was trying to work on things like financial independence. And if you don't know what financial independence means, it's basically where you have the option, or you even have investments paying for your expenses. So I have investments paying for my expenses so that I don't have to trade time for money. I don't have to physically work in order for me to pay for my bills. That is what I'm working towards. And in order for me to do that, I need to have money to be able to invest, right? But I can't have money to invest if I'm busy paying a £300 car loan, right? With a 14% interest. Okay, so for me, it made sense to now pay off the debt, because I was like, oh, actually, if I want to get to financial independence, I need to get rid of some of these liabilities and I need to start increasing my assets. Okay. So really get clear on where you're trying to get to. Are you trying to pay off debt? If so, why? Not that you just want to pay off debt. Why? Why is it important to you? Why are you trying to pay off that debt? Is it because you don't want to have to deal with payments anymore? Are you trying to focus on getting financially secure? So you want your emergency fund, for example? Get clear on where you're trying to get to. Are you trying to become financially independent? Personally, I think everyone should be working towards financial independence. And the reason why I say that is not because I want everyone to start quitting their jobs. I don't want everyone to be doing that. But I want you to also have the ability to work if you want to. And if anything happens to your income, let's say that you get laid off at your job, if you've got investments paying for your bills, well, then you can then just start focusing on either getting another job or deciding to take some time off or doing whatever you want to do. Okay. So that's why I believe that everyone should be working towards financial independence. You don't have to, but I just think it is important for everyone. Hello, Louise. Hope you're okay. So that's what I mean by clarification. So really being clear on where you're currently at, where you want to go. And so when you do that, that's when you can start to understand, okay, well, if I'm like here, like I have this many savings or I have like this much debt, but I want to get to here, what do I need to do to get to that point? Right? What do I need to do? So Miss asked a good question. So emergency fund first or pay off debt first? It's a really good question. And I will always say, and I say this to my clients, that it actually depends on how comfortable you are with the debt versus having an emergency fund. Right. So a lot of you may know Dave Ramsey, for example. He suggests that you have like $1,000, which probably is like £1,000 mini emergency fund, and then and that's it. And then you start attacking the debt, right? However, there are other professionals or some other gurus that will say actually they think you should have like a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And when I say emergency fund, it's literally just a pot of savings for emergencies. So like if anything happens, like you lose your job or like the boiler breaks down and or you have to change your roof or something, you have money there. So what some gurus will suggest is have your 3 to 6 months emergency first. So build your emergency fund first and then pay off the debt. What I say is think about your attitude to risk. In that, what I mean is, are you more comfortable having a bigger emergency fund first and then paying off the debt? Or are you more comfortable having a smaller emergency fund and then paying off the debt? For me personally, I was the latter. So I knew that I could probably, like, for me, because I knew that I didn't have big expenses. Like, I just had my £500 a month rent that I was paying, and that was all bills included. But my biggest expense was probably my car. So I knew that as long as I had enough money to fix my car if anything happened, I could attack the rest of my income and use that to pay off my debt. So I even think I didn't even have 1,000. I think I started with like 500, and then I increased it to 1,000 as like a mini emergency fund. And then I started paying off my debt. Then when I paid off my debt, I then built it up to a 3 month emergency fund. So that was like 3 months worth of my expenses. So again, as I mentioned, it will depend. So whatever you're more comfortable with, right? So decide, like, what do you think is going to be more comfortable? Some people will even have like 1 month's worth of expenses and then pay off their debt. That is also something that you can do as well. Louise says, "Hi, Veronia. Love your channel. You were the first person to give me incentive, courage to start sorting out my finances. Thank you for that." Oh, I'm so happy, Louise. No, that's amazing. Honestly, like this is what I'm here for. Like, I feel like this is God's calling for me. So I'm gonna continue doing it. And again, guys, if you've got any questions, please do let me know. But that was a really good question, and hopefully that was helpful. Okay. So that's the clarification stage, right? So getting clear where you're at, and then getting clear where you want to go. The next phase that I would personally say is, now you want to start thinking about controlling. Now, when I say controlling, I mean what thinking about having a system when you get paid. And by system, it could be having a budget, for example. And I know, like, sometimes we have sore feelings around budgets and like having a budget, but I think the reason why you probably have a sore feeling is because of the way its budgets have been communicated in the past. Like, I think the way people communicate a budget, it's like, oh my gosh, this is something that you have to do, and it's just something that, it's kind of like cleaning the toilet. Like, no one wants to clean the toilet, right? When me and my husband first got married, we were like, who's cleaning the toilet, right? It's like something that you have to do, but you don't want to do. But what I would say is, it's not really the budget that's the problem. It's actually the way we think about the budget and the fact that we do not realize how the budget can actually benefit us. That's the problem. If you realize how the budget can benefit you and how to make the budget work for you personally, you probably wouldn't hate budgeting. Like, I thought when I first started budgeting, I thought it was going to be this confusing process. I was like, why on earth do people budget? Like, it just feels like so long. Like, why do people do it? But it was until I realized that actually the reason why I need to do a budget is because, number one, I know that it's going to help me fulfill my financial goals, because I need to know how much I typically spend or how much money I have left to save to then work towards my goals. But also, number two, having the relief of knowing that, like, my savings and paying off my debt is all sorted and my essential bills are all paid for, really helps me, like, financially. It really helps me with my spending. And as someone who is a spender, and I will 100% tell you that I am naturally a spender, it he- actually having a budget helps me even more. I think having a budget helps me being a spender more than it would have helped me being a saver. I'm actually going to put that out there, because what it did is, when I first did the budget, and all I'm and when we're talking about budgets, all I'm saying is that you're just trying to tell your money where to go. Like, you're planning out your money, you're planning out your finances, right? So literally, you might look at your income and say, okay, this is how much I have, this is how much I want to put into savings, this is how much I need to pay my bills, and this is how much I want to spend. Having that process allowed me to spend money, because I then knew I was already taking care of my savings and my essential bills. So when people always say, like, oh, like, I don't want to budget because it's restricting, I'm always like, how can the budget be restricting when you are the one who is in control of it? because I control my budget. Like, I control how much I want to spend. The only thing that may feel a little bit, and it's not even restricting, but it's more of a reality check. What the budget may tell you is that you might be thinking you have more to spend after you pay your bills. That's what the budget will give you a reality check, but that's on your income. So that's on you. Okay? So if you're uncomfortable with your budget telling you, okay, look, like after you pay your bills, or after you've maybe saved this amount of money, after you've chosen how much to save, right? This is how much you have left to spend. If you're not happy with that, then you need to focus on, okay, well, if that's the case, I need to make more money. I need to increase my income. Because because if we look at it, the budget is only showing you what you have put on there. Okay. So if the budget is telling you actually you may not have that much as much money as you want to spend, that is because of your income. So you then need to decide, okay, do I want to save less? Do I want to spend less? Or do I want to make more money? But the budget doesn't force you to do that. You have to make that decision. Okay. Um, so Louise said, I'm terrible with numbers. I really struggle. I'm scared to budget. Any advice where to get started? Yes, especially with perfect question, Louise, especially with being scared to budget. And I know like this is a lot, like I have like half my clients either have maybe started budgeting, but something like happens and they've maybe not done it as well as they want it. Or I have some clients where they've never even wanted to budget. Like they've watched the videos, they even probably watch my budget update videos, but they're actually scared to pull the plug. And what I will say is that when it comes to your numbers and essentially when I'm talking about numbers in your budget, I'm literally just saying you putting down your income and then you deciding, okay, this is how much I want to save, you putting down how much your expenses come to. If you're scared to do it, you really have to just think deeply about how much you want to change. Or what, again, going back to the clarification, what are you trying to work on? What are you trying to focus on? What is your key goal? Because the reason why, again, that I started budgeting was not only because I wanted to pay off my debt, but it was because I was working towards financial independence. That hunger for financial independence outweighed the fear I had with looking at my budget. It outweighed it because my why was so strong. So whenever like people are telling you like, oh, think about your why, the reason why I'm always harping on like really be clear on your why, it's because that is what's going to help you overcome that fear of looking at your budget, right? So for me, I was very similar. Like someone who spent their whole paycheck. I don't have to look at my budget thinking like, oh, like this is how much I spend. But I will say that if you take the courage and just even treat it as an experiment, just say, do you know what? Like, and even actually, before I even get my clients to do a budget, what I tell them is just what I get them to do is just look at their expenses for the past couple of months, even before you set your budget, and just literally write down what your expenses were in the last month. So what was your income for the last month? How much did you put away for savings if you did? If you had debt, how much did you put set aside for that? How much were your bills? How much did your bills come to? And then how much did you spend in each category? Right? How much did you spend on food, takeaways, groceries, going out, for example, all of that, toiletries, all of that, just how much did you spend? And when they do that, I think that is probably the catalyst that actually gets them to start budgeting because then they realize, oh, this is how much I was spending on this. And I don't even like that didn't even satisfy me. Like I wasn't even happy with how I spent that money. It like opens their eyes and it's not like in a really bad way where they feel like really shameful, but they're just like, oh, okay, so this is how I've been spending my money. No, I now realize why I need to be budgeting because they've just gone through the exercise of just simply just looking through their expenses. So if I was you, if you're scared to even budget, I would even say before you start doing a budget, just have a look at your expenses. Just see how you've been spending your money. And actually, when it comes to the budget, how you spend your money will help guide you with how you will do your budget. And that's again why I get them to look through their expenses, because then when they're now doing the budget, they're saying, okay, so this is my income, and based on last month or the month before, this is how much on average I'm spending. So this is what I'm going to put into my budget. Your budget is not just for your savings and your essential bills. Your budget is actually helping you plan your spending. Like my when I do my budget, there is a and you'll see from my budget updates if you've ever seen them, but there is a separate section for my spending where I'm thinking, how am I going to spend my money in the month? Like, am I going to go out in the month, or is there anything that I'm planning to buy during the month? That's literally goes into the budget. And I think like one of the biggest mistakes that I see people doing is that it's almost like they think they need to exclude all of that in their budget. Like I see sometimes like clients will come to me, and then they'll have the budget out, and then I'm like, but are you not going out this month? Like, are you not going to any restaurants? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, well, why is it not in the budget? And it's like they think that they're not supposed to have it in the budget, because all the budget is there for is to just help you, save all your money. No, like the budget is there, yes, to help you like save for your financial goals, but it's also there to help you plan out your spending so that you can go out, so that you can go and get that coffee if you want to, right? Like I had one client where she like kept like sometimes overspending on her budget because she was going out to coffee when she would go out to work, and she wouldn't put it in the budget, and then she'd be upset at the end of the month thinking, oh, I didn't stick to my budget. And I said, it's because you didn't put the coffee in the budget. If you'd have just planned for it and just put it in the budget, you wouldn't feel guilty, because you would have stuck to your budget, because you would have spent the money because it was budgeted for, right? So that's what I would say, like when it comes to the budgeting process. Like have a look through your expenses, just do that exercise. And then once you're comfortable with that exercise, now you can then decide, okay, all I'm going to do is when it comes to my budget, I'm just going to list out, even if you just list out your income, and then just list out, even if you just sort out your essential bills. Because I remember having one client where she was even struggling, like she had money, but she was even struggling to pay her essential bills. And it's because she didn't have things noted down. Like she didn't have a budget, and she didn't understand how much her essential bills came to. So just by doing that one exercise where she simply wrote down her income, wrote down what her essential bills came to, when she then got paid, she simply kept enough money for her essential bills and then spent the rest. So it meant that at least she had essential bills paid for. And that made her happy. Like she was elated, because she was like, at least I know that every time I get paid, my essential bills are paid for, and the rest of the money can do what it you can spend it how you like, to be honest. That's like my philosophy. For me, once I have paid my essential bills and I've got my savings and investments taken care of, the rest of the money I can spend it how I like. And you can be as strict or as loose as you want it to be. Like you don't have to have your spending in like clear categories, like eating out, toiletries. Like I have clients who want to be a bit loose, but all I say is just as long as you take care of your priorities, everything else like can be spent. That's it. Hi Miriam. Oh, thank you so much for saying Veronia's budget tracker is amazing. Just out of interest, I purchased the weekly and monthly one from you. Should I use both, or is the weekly one for those who get paid weekly? Yes. So it honestly depends how you get paid or how you would prefer to budget. So I made like a weekly template if you get paid weekly, because I also remember like I had clients that also got paid weekly. So for them, it was a bit easier for them to think, okay, how am I going to budget this week with the income that I have? But obviously, many of us also get paid monthly. So if you do get paid monthly, the monthly budget is a good way to kind of look at, especially if you have like direct debits or like bills that are only due once a month, then that's a way to do it. Like, for example, you may also get paid weekly, but you may decide to have a budget for the month, because it may be easier for you. Like, that's what we currently do. So, my husband gets paid monthly, but I get paid weekly. So, what we do is we won't spend my money until the end of the month. And so even though I'm getting paid each week, we will leave the money in the account until my husband gets paid, and then we'll just set a budget for the rest of the month, like for the following month. So that's how we personally do our budget. Um, Louise says, so inspirational motivation. I need to take the plunge. I've never had a budget. Yeah, 2018, I never budget was not even in my vocabulary. But I've seen like how it's changed. It's really just changed my life and just changed like how I spend money, because now I just never feel guilty spending money, because like the budget just allows me to do it. Like it frees me up even more than I was spending. Because at least because before I had a budget, I was spending money, but then at the end of the month, I'd be like, oh, should I have spent money? I haven't saved anything. Like, oh, I feel kind of bad. And I feel so guilty because I'm like, oh, should I even be spending money on like going out with my friends? Whereas now, because I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to go out like, I don't know, like twice this month or 3 times this month. Like for me this month, it's my birthday next Sunday. So I'm like, I know that I'm gonna probably spend more money. So for me, I already knew like from before that in my budget, I had the plan to spend money. So I plan to spend money. A lot of people think that your budget is there to stop you spending money. No, it's just to help guide you in terms of, okay, how are you going to spend your money? How much do you want to spend personally? It's going to give you that control, right? Okay. Um, Hi Carol. I've just finished watching your wedding series. Can I ask how many people you had at your wedding, please, so I can have an idea budget wise? Very good question. I think I'm trying to remember. I think we initially had we were going to have about 250 people, but 230 odd showed up. So just to count, like not everyone's going to show up at your wedding, but yeah, over 200. Um, Mag says, yes, knowing your numbers is essential in making progress. 100%. Someone asked, do you do one-to-one sessions advice? So I do coaching. So I do one-to-one coaching. It is linked in my description below. So yes, if you're trying to improve your finances, I do one-to-one coaching as well. If you look at bossfinanceacademy.com, it's also there as well. I always have a little budget buffer. If you want to get that extra coffee or I have to buy some medicine or car park fees, I always try to save that amount like a challenge. Yeah, exactly. So even I remember having a client actually where she always wanted to have a buffer. So, and by buffer, what I mean is just some extra money in her account, just in case like she needs to buy something. That is also something that you can do as well. So, if you like, for example, for us, we have a miscellaneous part in our budget, and that's just for any sort of random, because random things come up, like let's not lie, like random things will come up. So if anything comes up, we literally just have like a category for miscellaneous, so just in case, we need to buy something. My husband tends to buy random things on Amazon a lot. So we have the miscellaneous pot there, so it's ready, it's in the budget. Okay, thank you, happy birthday for next week. Thanks so much, Louise. Yes, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 28, guys. Close to 30. I'm excited and nervous at the same time, but again, I digress. So that's the control phase. And in thinking about the control phase as well, I will say that when you're, again, part of it is budgeting, but then also part of it is going to be learning how to save. So if you are someone who has been trying to save, or you're planning to try and save a lot more this year, I will say that in like this phase, like once you're very clear on where you are and where you're trying to go to, learning how to save will also help you. And I'm telling you, from someone who has got to the point where I was not save, I never used to save anything, nothing. When I tell you guys, I did not have a savings account at all, never. But when I now started saving, and I even ventured to open up my own savings account, things really started to change. And I say this because when you now start to save, it can help you do so many other things. So, for example, in my case, it helped me pay off my debt quickly, because yes, I was making the minimum payments, but I was also saving money at the same time so that I could make big overpayments to my debt. And then once I paid off my debt, I was able to save up for an emergency fund. So if anything happened, like to my finances, or like at my job, they used to do restructures all the time and they would make people redundant just like that. if that happened to me, I knew that I could at least tide myself for at least 3 months before I need to find another job. So being able to save up for that emergency fund was helpful. And then I was also able to save up for my wedding, for example. I paid that in cash. I was able to save that in literally like a less than I think I saved up 5 grand in like less than 4 months or something. Like it didn't take me very long. But also it was during COVID. So there was also that because we weren't spending any money anyway. But it helped me quickly pay for my wedding. And then I was able to start saving and start investing my money. And so because I had savings already, and I also had savings for other expected expenses. So for example, like if I need to fix my car, or like I don't know, like if I wanted to go on holiday, because I already had those savings, I could then start investing my money and start growing my money. And I'm going to talk about that more in the next phase. Um, I think apparently I missed Roxanne's question. Oh, yes, I've seen it. As a mature student, a mother of two, how can I maintain a healthy emergency via saving for a property with a part-time job via uni? That's a really interesting question. Let me just read it again. Emergency via saving for a property. So what I would say with this is kind of especially because you're working part-time, and because you're at uni, you may not be able to do everything. Like when I was, studying for my masters, my income was a lot lower than when I was working full-time. And especially if you have children, like honestly, God bless you, because like you're a mother of two. I think you just need to be a bit more realistic and say, actually, what are the first things that I really want to focus on? So if, for example, you feel like actually an emergency fund is going to be more important than the property, I would focus more on the emergency fund. Obviously, I can't give like specific financial advice, so this is just kind of like my thoughts in terms of what I would do personally. But especially if I'm working part-time, I would probably personally be thinking about how can I actually learn how to save a lot more money so that I at least have some savings. And then I would then focus on saving up for a property, for example, especially if you don't have like any high interest debt. So that's what I would be focusing on. And that's something that I also did as well, to be honest. Like I focused on saving, having that emergency before then starting to think about like um buying a house and all of that stuff. But really being clear, especially because you're working part-time, I would be trying to like build up the cash. And it may take a bit longer because obviously you are working part-time, but I would be trying to build up the cash to have something just in case, anything happens, and especially because you have kids as well. And of course, if you're thinking, and this also depends if you've got like childcare as well. Like if you've got childcare expenses, that's also going to have an impact. So just be clear on like what you really want to focus on. Thank you so much, Mabel, for helping me with that question as well. Did you have any side hustles to increase your income whilst paying off your debt? No, I did not. So I actually paid off my debt with my 27.5K salary. And the only increase I had was a 2% increase for my work, which was to keep in line with inflation. Now, having said that, if I knew what I know now, I definitely would have started side hustles to try and increase my income. Like I would have done it at the same time. Like I would have tried to decrease my expenses and increase my income. But during 2018, like I didn't really come across like side hustles. Like that wasn't really a big thing at the time. Like obviously like people are talking about this all the time now. But like pre-COVID times, it wasn't like a huge thing that people were talking about. So for me, my main focus was literally just like trying to learn how to save the income that I have and then pay off the debt. So I didn't have any side hustles. I was considering getting a second job. But then I think for me, I just decided to like get really clear on my finances and then just like pay it off and like really just learn how to like master saving. And I am kind of happy I did that. And the reason why I say that is just because and I've mentioned this before, but sometimes when we're thinking about making more money, it is almost at a detriment to managing the money that we have. And what I mean by this is if you're making more money, but it's not moving the needle, like it's not, like even though you're making, like, let's say you're making an extra 200, 300 a month, but it's not actually going towards your debt. well, then you've kind of almost defeated that purpose, right? Like if the reason for you making more money was to help pay off your debt, but it's not doing it, you've kind of defeated the purpose. Whereas if you learn how to manage your money and then you make money, then that will accelerate your progress. So I'm always in the camp for with like, also, like, whilst you're increasing your income, be very clear on how to manage that money well, so that when you increase that income, it actually blesses you and it doesn't become a detriment to you, if that makes sense. But yeah, like in terms of your questions, I didn't have any side hustles or anything like that. Did you have overdraft debt? I find overdraft debt traps into a cycle of debt that is difficult to get out of. Yes, I had a £2,000 overdraft debt that was from my university student loan. And then when I was doing my master's, I remember um, I knew that I would have to pay off my overdraft quickly, because otherwise they were gonna like start to incur lots of fees. And if you like with overdraft fees, they're just so much more expensive, like they're crazy expensive. So what I did was, because I knew I was a student, I then went back to my bank and said, "Oh, I'm a student again, so can you give me another student overdraft?" Like that's how crazy it was, right? Like, because I just didn't know how to pay off my debt, because I just didn't know how to do it. So I was like, I'm just gonna delay this until I find another job, and then once I find another job, like I'll figure it out. So yeah, so essentially, like, yeah, it was £2,000 that I pretty much had from university, and then ended up paying that off when I started on my journey in 2020. But yeah, it's definitely a cycle that can be very difficult to get out of. But this is why I say, like, if you learn how to like build the foundation of even just learning how to save, that can also help you when it comes to getting out of debt. Because then once you learn how to save, once you learn how to have that money and keep that money, you can then start to do other things like overpay on your debt, but also learn how to save for your emergency funds, save for your house deposit. And then you can now start thinking about growing your money and investing your money. So if like learning how to save is something that you want to do this year, definitely, like, I would definitely focus on it. Obviously, like on my video, I have so no, not on my video, on my channel, I have so many saving videos. So yeah, make sure you check that out. So that's the second stage. So that's the control phase. Um, and I don't have time to also talk about things like sinking funds, but what I will say is that in that, you also want to be saving for expected expenses. And what I mean by this is anything that, like, that will come up maybe throughout the year. I would personally start saving up for it if you can, because then you're less likely to have to dip into your other savings. So, as I'll give myself as an example, when I was trying to overpay on my debt, what was happening was that I'd be trying to save money. So I'd be saving money here and there, and I'd be like, yes, I'm saving money. And then it would get to a point where my car insurance was due, or I had to pay for like road coverage, or something would come up with my car, and I'd be like, oh, I don't have enough money to pay for this. So then I would have to dip into the savings, so that the money that I had been saving up for over the few months, I would have to dip into that and then use that to pay for those expenses, until I realized that actually I need to start preparing for those expenses in advance, so that I don't have to keep dipping into my savings. And so this is where things like sinking funds can be really useful, because what you're doing is just saving up for some of these expenses over time. And again, like, if you type in like my name, sinking funds, like Veronia Spain sinking funds, I have a detailed video on sinking funds as well. So definitely check that out if you want to learn more about sinking funds. Do you agree keeping your expenses down was key to paying off your debt quicker? Yes, it accelerated paying off my debt very, very quickly, I would say. And when it comes to like expenses, it wasn't that like I cut out everything and then like I just had no life. But what I did is told myself, okay, what are some of the biggest expenses that I could cut down that means I could put towards my debt? So for me personally, housing was one of my biggest expenses. So I decided to become a lodger, because I was like, if I can cut down my housing expense, I then don't have to cut down like other expenses. Like, for example, I could still go out and meet my friends, but still be able to pay off my debt very quickly. So for me, housing was like one of the biggest things, and or just small things like with my car insurance, paying annually instead of monthly, because when you pay monthly, it's more expensive because they add interest on it. So because I paid monthly for it, I already made a saving, and that saving I could then add towards paying off my debt. So it was just things like that. But I would definitely say for me, housing was the biggest thing. Like once I cut down my housing expense, that actually accelerated my debt payoff really quickly. But also, I would say using the power of sinking funds actually helped me, because I then just didn't have to keep dipping into my savings. And so I could still keep focus on saving a lot more to then overpay on my debt, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's when it comes to the control phase. So the third phase that I want to talk about just really quickly is the accelerate phase. And the reason why I call this the accelerate phase is because even though like I always preach about saving, because that is like the foundational thing you can do, when I'm talking about saving, I am not talking about saving just to save money. I am also talking about saving to also grow your money, because it's very difficult to just save your money in a bank account to just build wealth. Okay. So when I say accelerate, this is where I'm talking about things like starting to make your money work for you. So if you've now got to the point where like you don't have debt, for example, and you've already saved up for things like where you've saved up for your emergency fund, or you're saving up for other sinking funds, or like you've saved up for your house deposit, or you're saving up for your house deposit, you also want to think about accelerating your progress, especially if you're looking at things like financial independence. Like if you want to be financially independent in the future, where you don't have to depend on your job to pay your bills, this is where this accelerate phase is going to be really important. And this is basically where this is where I've been since say like the end of 2020. This is like the phase that I've been in. And so this is where you start thinking about like investing your money, for example. And so investing simply means just putting your money to work for you. So rather than you having to go out to work to make money, if you start investing, then that money can actually, do the work for you. Like you don't have to do anything once you've invested that money. Now, again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I will never tell people like, oh, this is what you should invest in. But what I will say is that when it comes to investing, researching is going to be really, really important, because there are just so many different investment types and then things that you can invest in. And especially in the online world, it can be very overwhelming. But what I will say is that when it comes to investing, you have to be very clear with what you're trying to do, like what you're trying to work towards. So if we go back to the clarification phase, the reason why I invest money is because I'm working towards financial independence. That is one of my long-term goals. So because of that, I'm now going to start investing my money, because I want my money to work for me. I want it to get to the point where the investments pay for my bills. Okay. So especially when you're thinking about the long term. So if you're thinking about things like financial independence, or you're thinking about things like retirement, which we should, even if you are 27 like me, I can still say 27 because I haven't got my birthday. My birthday's not till next week. But even if you're in like your mid 20s or your early 30s, because like I have a lot of clients that are in their early 30s, retirement is going to be something you probably want to think about. And it's a lot easier to do when you are younger, because you don't have to start investing so much money into it. So if you're thinking about what am I going to do like when I stop working, and if I don't want the government to, if I don't want to depend on the government, because Lord knows I am not depending on the government to fund my retirement. No way, no how. After seeing what the government has done these couple of years, no way. I am not depending on the government. You can if you want to, but that's not me. So because of that, I then need to think about, okay, well, how much do I need to be investing in order for me to make sure that when I eventually stop working and I decide to retire, that I still have money to pay for my bills and I don't have to depend on the state pension. Okay. So that's really where the accelerate phase comes in. And also with that accelerate phase, that will also help you to start thinking about making more money as well. Because when you now start to make more money, and you already know how to control your money. So again, going back to that control phase, that's going to help you then just accelerate your progress even more, because then you'll be able to invest more, you'll be able to save more, and you'll also be able to spend more as well. But this is why I always say, like, it's really key to do that in the accelerate phase. Like, once I knew how to manage my money well, I was like, okay, well, now I just need to focus on making more money, because that's going to help to accelerate my progress. Like, if I want to become financially independent really quickly, I need to now start making more money. And so, even like with that previous question, it's, I never say like, oh, like you shouldn't be making more money. No, 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 no. Making more money is going to be really important, but you just need to understand what season you're in, because you don't want to start making all this money but then not know where that money is going, and then still be in the same position as you were last year where you had less income. That doesn't make sense, but it happens to a lot of people. Whereas if you already know how to manage your money, you already know how to save, you know how to invest, well, then making more money is just going to help elevate that even more. And so you're going to reach your financial goals even more quickly, right? So, um, in terms of investing, again, I've got videos on that. That is something that I also help with my clients with. So if you ever want one-on-one coaching, that's also something that you can do. Integrated purgatory. Hello, happy new year. Yes, yes, I was doing a live today. So hopefully that was useful. Are there any other last minute questions? Because I'm probably gonna leave it there for now. I know that I did speak about a lot, but I really hope that was useful, especially if if like if finances is something that you really want to focus on this year. It all starts with you making the decision to do it. That's what I would say. Like, even though there's like, the savings hacks you can do, and, the no spend months, all of that is great. But you yourself have to really be like clear that this is something that you now want to focus on, because it is your brain, it is your mind that is now going to help you accelerate your progress to do everything. Okay. Am I too old for help? No, no, you're never too old for help. Honestly, you're never too old for help, right? Like, you're never too old. Like, I help my mom with my finances. My mom also used to, like, she used to be a spender. I hope she's not watching this, because sometimes she does watch my lives. But she also used to be a spender, and now the amount that she saves is like crazy. Like, she saves a lot, and like, I'm not going to tell my mom's age, but like it can change. And now she's thinking about, like, you know like, all these other financial goals where she hadn't really been thinking about it before, right? Because she was in the same lane that everyone else was in, where like everyone was kind of in this rat race, and they were just like working to pay bills, and then that's it. Okay, so you are never too old. Like, you're never too young, you're never too old. So hopefully that was useful. I think I'm going to leave it there because I have not made dinner yet. But I will try and do another live maybe at the end of January, just to like wrap this up. But I will have like more videos on my YouTube channel as well. So again, like, I know there was someone that was interested in one-on-one coaching. I will put a link in the chat as well if you're ever interested. You just need to book a call with me, and you can find out more about that. And I pretty much help you go through all of your finances. Um, but yeah, hopefully that was useful, guys. Happy New Year again. Let's smash 2023. Despite everything that is going on, I know that we can still do well with our finances, and we can still make progress because we have made the decision to do it. Okay. So thank you guys so much. Love you all, and I will speak soon. See you later. Bye.